Got it. I'm just waiting for that to kick in so that it's actually working before I got it. Yeah, that's it. So I'm just going to kill the tab that I was in. Yeah, okay. So let's fire ahead. So I'll start and see, are there any questions? We're going to look at, just have a look in a second at the project content and things like that, and then we look at. I think I got a request to look at maybe Google Ads, and I'm going to look at the Google Ads. Has anybody in the class actually used Google Ads?
Yeah, I have, but I didn't set it up. But I do look at the like the analytics.com from it.
Right. Okay. So we'll come to that in a while, and I'd be interested in getting your take on it, on what has happened with anything you've used in the past, because I have to admit to myself, it's a real gray area, to be honest. So we'll look at a couple of the websites to go through things, be it HubSpot or very Google themselves. I was finding it hard today to find some sort of online evaluation that would be balanced. So you've got to find at times a cross between what's being evangelical about it or what's being hypercritical, because the reality is they're both probably wrong, but the answer is normally somewhere in the middle, of either, oh, this is brilliant or this is terrible, So we'll have a look as we go through and see it. It'll be different for everybody who wants to try and use that. It's kind of like, how can you evaluate things and see whether it's good for you or not? And it's not just with Google Ads, but that would be across the piece with anything you're using. And, with traditional marketing, there are only so many tools you can use. With digital marketing, there's hundreds of options, and there's more plowing in all the time, pouring in every day. There's a ton of options. And, some of them are sort of fly-by-night efforts. Some of them, will prove in time to be very, very good. Some are very good as it is. So it's just a question of trying to figure out what's what. So let me just come out of that for 1 second. I see if I've got another email or anything. No? Now, hopefully, yeah. Okay, so yeah. So what I am going to look at then is also it's going to look at from the project report perspective. I did show you before the Christmas market in Salt Hill example of a project. Now I've used that over and over again this program because it's extremely good, and we will just look at that in a while from the perspective of writing up the report, the project report. And I'm not saying, and I'll show you one that's slightly different then as well. And it's not a question of you cloning the Saltail Market one and saying, oh, I must do everything that's in that. That just kind of covered all the bases. I think it's much more important in here that people find their own space and they find their own methodology of doing things, but there's a certain amount of things that you have to cover, you know, that you should have in there because it answers the brief, you know, and I think that's what this thing is about, really, you know. So I'm just going to our next slide. So we have reached we're at the 21st. We have 3 left. What we will look to be doing between now and when we finish is to really sort of recap on everything that we've done. And I'm going to be looking at, you know, and I'll do a bit of it tonight. You know, what if you're working as, you know, a digital marketer, or if you want to get into it, what's kind of involved if you're working as a freelancer and you're going to be working for multiple people, or, you know, if you're working within a company or whatever, you know. So we just kind of discussed that a bit because I think that would be part of what sort of people would want to do on a regular basis anyway, you know. Any questions on that? Okay, now so vis-a-vis the assignments, so we have and this is a sort of a general thing. The assignments that I've had submitted have been very, very good, and I would have expected that right across the piece. Now, I know there are some outstanding, and that's fine. I know people that get to it whenever they can, and as soon as they can. So what I did say there, so don't worry about the actual date that's on it. But if there's for instance, 8 members of the class have submitted. I haven't looked at the list to see who hasn't. 8 members of the class have submitted assignments for the first assignment. So I kind of always make an assumption that if people submit the first one, that they're going to submit the others. So if I'm expecting then to get as a minimum to get 8 assignments, so that 8 people will finish out and produce the assignments and produce the project, and that'll be great. So we look forward to getting that done. On the Moodle side of things, Luca, it's good to see you finally. We got you connected.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not 100% sure. There was an issue when I went in the other day about, you know, once you submitted your account and all of that type of stuff. I went in and I actually, there's a button there, an enroll button that I did, which actually seemed to have got it over the line. But I didn't have to do that for anyone else. So I don't know why it worked. That used to be what used to happen last year or the year before. Everybody would set up the account and then the tutor would go in and they'd see all the names and they go enroll everybody, right? Now that was happening automatically. So some glitch must have been there. But anyway, all's well that ends well. So you're finally, so, you know, so I couldn't figure out what the hell was the problem all the time. But anyway, I don't think Gary could either, but at least it's sorted.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. So anyway, and if over the next couple of weeks, if there are any particular aspects of what we've covered so far that people would like to revisit, or anything that we didn't cover at all, you thought, and you want to relook at it, then we'll do that. It's one of the things that we might look at like next week or the week after is we might go back and look at where Twitter is at. Because in this day and age, it's you know, because there was so many followers of Twitter and people who use it and used it business like, whether, if you remember what I was saying earlier about particularly for news outlets, channels, news agencies and journalists everywhere, Twitter had morphed into the go-to app to be used to get the information out or whatever. And then suddenly, you know, all the upheaval that went through with Trump and the elections and then thrown him off, and then Elon Musk, who, you know, I have to say all he has shown that I could see over the last few months is that he's a complete lunatic. Spends 46 billion, and it would appear then tried to destroy it in very short order. So, like, he'd have been better off, you know, setting fire to $100 notes. It would take him a lot longer to get rid of these 46 billion. It just doesn't make any sense, but we'll see. I think the guy's a maniac, but we'll see what happens over the next, because it'll affect other social media channels and, you know, the whole marketing side of things as well, because it's going to open up. If he completely implodes, people will look to move marketing revenue, say in the US and that particularly. So it'd be interesting to see, because it's a phenomenon that you would never have seen previously in the world before, where you can have some entity that's in the communication space, in the human communication space, and then suddenly the whole thing could fold in one day, because they've got rid of so many key people. If something goes down, they're not 100% sure whether they'll be able to get it back up. Now, the resilience on all sorts of social media and news media platforms today is phenomenal. You know, they rarely go down, and they've got backup, or what they call redundancy built in. So that backup is always built in, and you may have heard, I don't know if you've heard that term when it comes to people buying computer systems, communication systems. You may have ever heard the term that they have built-in redundancy. And what that really means is that if you need 6 servers running full tilt to run whatever the platform is or the communications tool is that you're using, you'll always have at least 7 or 8. And they're interconnected, so that if one goes down, the other one picks up straight away for conducting traffic, conducting business, whatever the hell it is, you know? So that if one goes down, you know, it doesn't topple everything over because you don't have the capacity anymore. So that's very important. But anyway, that was a digression. So that's what we're going to be about for at least part of the time tonight. And a little bit then as well later on, we did some last week on content creation. So I did a little bit on that when we were talking about YouTube and that, you know, piece on, you know, if you have a bit of video, editing it or creating, you know, creating maybe a little piece of video by just using stills and stuff like that. And so that kind of thing could be very important. If particularly if you're trying to get, you know, really good images across, if you're marketing stuff coming up to Christmas, in the running, if you're in the hospitality side of things, if you know restaurants for lunches and Christmas parties and all that type of stuff will be wanting to put the best images out there, you know, so you could end up with 4 images of different offerings, different plates, desserts, whatever the hell it is. And then, you combine those into a little short video, 30-second video, 15-second video, whatever the hell it is for, and it could be just actually stills you've taken of the dishes or whatever, and then just roll them over. And so that can work quite well, so there, and what you're doing then is you're creating content for virtually no cost that it could have cost you quite a bit of money, Any questions on any of that before we start into it? Right, here we go. Okay, so the project and the assignment, assuming that I'm assuming that most people who are on at the moment are going to produce project, and so I look at these two examples of what we have from before. Now I've got they're in downloads, I think. I am trying to, bear with me now for a second. I was sure I downloaded them earlier today. Anyway, I'll get them in a minute. Yep. I've got so many things open. Bear with me because I did have it open and put down on the number of tabs I have open here, and it'll speed up my computer a bit. Can everybody see that? You can? Okay, that was it. So this was and I showed you previously. This I'm hard to imagine was 8 years ago, but so they had the indoor Christmas market. It was running over the weekend, and the idea was to promote it, right? So in Joanna, in her introduction, and it was a simple thing that said, the digital marketing campaign was designed for that indoor market on that weekend, and the outline strategy was supplemented and coherent with traditional marketing campaign. So what she said is, we're running this digital marketing campaign, but we're also going to do some traditional stuff as well at the same time. So, and that was just said simple, straightforward. There's nothing more to say. That's what they were doing. It worked reasonably well. So then, if you look at the assignment brief for the project, it talks about explaining in your project why you're running this digital marketing campaign, and also that that the key characteristics of the web as a marketing medium are very important in this whole thing, because otherwise you wouldn't do it. So that's the thinking behind it, and that is also very directly related to what was the very first assignment that you did, which was all about what are the unique characteristics of the web as a marketing medium that that means that I'm going to run a digital marketing campaign to promote this, whatever it is. This was a Christmas market, and that is, so that makes sense. Now I'm trying to avoid also being too pedantic and to keep stating the obvious about what we're doing here, but this is really what this, when it comes to writing up the report, this is important that this kind of stuff isn't there. So all she's doing there is just positioning why It is, and I'm not gonna labor that any further. And then she has the reference points. You could do references at the end. It doesn't need to be down to the nth degree. You know what I mean? Because this is probably, it's nice, but it's probably not needed in every instance. Because at the end, you may say, well, I used the following. You might have a little bibliography at the end that said I've used the following. I don't need it referenced with, I forget what you call these little numbers here. I don't need it referenced down to that detail. You know, so I don't want to scare people off by doing that, by showing that there. The woman who did this just did that on autopilot because she was used to doing it, you know. Okay. So then she looks at the stages of development, and really that's your second one. She have an overview of the market and related that directly to the project she was doing, and saying that this was created just for that specific market and nothing else. So it was taking the overall generic thing about what's the overview, but this is the overview of the market, and giving you an idea of, you know, what it is that you were trying to promote, you know. So it's saying, here's what it was, and then the location, that type of thing. The business objectives is to generate income for the traders taking part in the market. And that's, you don't need anything more out of that, because in this instance, given the nature of that beast, that's all you were doing. And that's pretty common sense. The people, we set market, we brought people in, they wanted to sell stuff, and the only reason they want to sell it is they want to make money. And that's simple, straightforward. You know, they're not just doing it for the fun of it. And then it was to create some sort of cordiality and, you know, this kind of stuff. And you know, you really at Christmas time as well, you're sort of trading on goodwill and happiness, and everybody's feeling warm and fuzzy and stuff like that, and all the lights are on and people are singing jingle bells and things like that. So that's you always try to, you know, you also always try to gather that, you know. There a statistic that I was looking at there, now a guy told me last week, and I think I might have mentioned here, it's something like in the market for like men's clothing in Ireland, 97% of the year's turnover is taken in the Christmas period, which is phenomenal, but not unusual. And it wouldn't be hard to believe, you know. The percentage for female clothing would be way, way less. It's still probably high enough, but way, way less. Because in reality, women tend to buy clothes throughout the year and men don't. That's there are a lot of my fellow men out there will be tutting and all that, but that is the actual truth. So you know, that's, and it's quite hilarious actually. So you're trying to promote that market. You're trying to, you know, you always try at anything you're trying to promote at Christmas time. You're trying to piggyback part of the goodwill that's out there, because people like to spend money, they like to do things and all that. And I don't know if Ireland is unique or not, but Christmas in Ireland lasts about 6 weeks, you know. I've been in places in the US where it lasts 1 day. And if you're lucky, that's, you know, and that's just because it's just a different planet, you know. Whereas here, Christmas, the Galway market opened last week, And that's going to run right through to the 23rd, you know. And so we tend to do Christmas bigger than anyone else in terms of just the length of time and just hamming it up and stuff like that. And if you're in that market, then you know that has to be firmly fixed in your mind that you can get into that market and use it. You know. So so then and she set out the goals and what she was going to do in terms of this particular program. She developed a Facebook profile and a WordPress website, which was just kind of a blog site, and move it up from there, you know. So that's what she was going to do, and then see what it would take, and then set some targets, you know. And as I said previously, if you are in terms of this project, and given you're not going to be spending a whole pile of money on this or any money or anything like that, is you can set whatever targets you want. But in the interests of reality, you should set, if you're setting targets, they should be semi-achievable or achievable, preferably, you know, because if she had said something like, I want to get, you know, 2,500 likes in a month, that would be unrealistic, you know, so it wouldn't make sense, you know. So now, as I said before, in terms of this project, it doesn't matter when you're doing this campaign, which is an experimental thing, essentially, it doesn't matter whether or not you achieve those targets. What matters is whether or not you know if you've achieved them or not. And if you didn't achieve them, understand why you didn't. And if you did achieve them, understand why you did. Because many times, if you failed to achieve something, it's probably going to be pretty obvious. Sometimes in various different processes or operations, something becomes wildly successful and people don't know why. They have an idea, but they don't know why something would become so successful. You know, so it's kind of it's as useful to have a handle on what is successful as what isn't, you know. But it's important to know that, you know, if you're marketing, know a bit about your audience, to be able to measure the effectiveness of each channel. So that's what to be able to, you know, to figure out, get the reports back and say, was this good or bad? Did I achieve what I was trying to do? That type of thing, you know, and that's part of your report. And in this instance, she was producing insights from Facebook. And when you're doing that, you can drop those, you know, you can take a screenshot of those things and just drop them into the into your report. And what it does is, and aside from this program and this project, if you're producing reports for anything, or if you were making a pitch to somebody, if you were you know, looking to get a gig doing marketing or something like that, and you were making a pitch to them, having graphics of some description, breaking up the text in whatever it is you're promoting or proposing, is always good. You know, because the old saying of a picture paints 1,000 words is true. You know, if people can see, all right, I can see that makes sense, right? Now, I will say as well that the projects that you guys will be doing, you don't need to go into the depth of detail that Joanna did here, because she's doing a power of stuff in here. So I'm not expecting, you know, something sliced 6 different ways with the same information, you know. You don't need to do that. Facebook competition, why it was run, and all of that stuff, and conclusion at the end. So what it was essentially was, you know, here's what we're doing. This is when we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how we measured it. You know, so it was pretty straightforward in that. Now, there was a fair volume of stuff in it, but it captured all the notions, and it captured the reason why she put it together. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? It's not spooking people out, scaring everyone off or anything, is it?
I just have one question. You know,
Sure, Sophia, yeah.
you were saying in the brief a few weeks ago, I was asking you about it, and you said we have to write about how we're going to measure the project and if we measure the project. But I'm just a bit confused, kind of.
When you say
that
products, no.
No, project, sorry.
Oh,
Project.
yeah.
Just like the measuring of it. And
The
how we're
measuring,
going to measure it.
it depends on what the objectives are, right, of the project, right? So if you want to build up, say it's brand awareness that you're doing, right? So you would decide what's going to be my methodology here for building brand awareness. So you decide, for instance, I'm going to promote this using social media channels. And you decide that you are going to use Facebook and Instagram or something like that, right? So you're going to use them, and it's going to be over a defined period of time. So normally in those instances, what you're starting out with is, say you're going to use Facebook. So you will either be starting out with an established Facebook page or no Facebook page at all, right? So if you have no Facebook page for whatever it is you're promoting, you'd say, right, as part of the project, well, the first thing we had to do was, because we didn't have a presence in social media land type of thing, we set up a Facebook page. And because we felt that was important and we have to do it now. Because it doesn't exist up to now, part of this project, it's starting like at, you know, day 1 minus 10 type thing, because we have to get some followers before we can promote, right? So the first thing you're doing is getting a promotional piece out that's saying we now have a Facebook page, right? And that's where you might decide that, well, how do we let people know we have a Facebook page? Well, people who are involved, like yourself, if you're the marketer, or the business principals, if you're promoting a business, if they have personal Facebook pages, they might say, hey, you know, we've just launched this business page, you know, and promote it among their friends and relatives to promote it and to follow it, and ask people to do that, so that you get some sort of a critical mass established, you know. No, and that would be a chunk of what you're doing at the start, and that would influence, if you were running a campaign for a month, that would influence what your targets were. Now, if it's a situation where there is a Facebook page already in existence, and now maybe it's flying, or maybe it's gone a bit stale, or it's just stagnant, you know, then you're starting from maybe a base. Say it had already 200 followers or whatever, you'll sort of say, well, in a 4-week period or wherever, we're going to look to double that, because you can market into the people who already follow the page then, because they follow the page. So you don't have to drag people onto the page in that instance. And you will use those people to try and promote it further and push it out, you know. So from that instance, that might be one of the measures that you have, you know. And at the end of that 4-week period, you could come back and say, well, we had to start from scratch, or we had to build up from a certain area, and we said we'll try and double the number of followers, or we get to 200 or something like that. And that's one measure. At the end of the 2 weeks or 4 weeks, your followers are now at 250. You'd say, well, we overachieved and that was great. Or you were looking for 500 and we didn't get them. And you just analyze why you didn't get them and sort of say, why do you think? And in some instances, it's going to be a gut feel. It's going to be, what do you think? Because you won't know for certain, like, and no one knows. So it's just a question of, you dig a lot deeper into it if you're out actually doing it in real life for money. And even if you are as part of this project, when it comes to writing up the project report, it's what you'll be bringing your best intelligence to it, what you think it is, because nobody's going to question it, you know. So does that help, or does it confuse you more?
No, yeah. So like basically the measure, when you're talking about the measurement at the end, it's kind of, you're just like evaluating your results and
Yes.
your targets that you kind of had at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the important thing here is, and I glossed over it, is in any project, whether it's out there in the real world and it's, you know, it's business critical and all that kind of stuff. If your targets are not easily understood and stated, then it's going to be harder to measure them. So it doesn't matter what your targets are, your aims, they have to be really simple. Because if they're woolly, you know, then you kind of go, oh, because it can't be like half good or half bad in these instances. It can't be sort of matter of opinion things. You either achieved the target or you didn't. Now, if you didn't, it may not be the end of the world. You know, if it's out there and it's real, right? But at least you know. And if you set targets that you can't properly measure, I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is how will you know? You know? Like, I'll give you sort of a parallel example. I used to be involved quite a bit over a number of years, managing groups and that, where we used to, in digital and in Norton, where we had performance appraisals in the jobs. So if I had 15 or 20 people working for me, every 6 months, they would get performance appraisal. And you sit down with the person, you go through that, what their performance was in the last 6 months, and they would get pay rises that were influenced by their performance, you know? So if they were winging it and doing nothing and just doing enough not to get fired, they obviously weren't going to get much of a pay rise. In fact, they probably wouldn't get any at all. But if they were flying it, you know, doing really well and doing extra stuff and all that, then they deserved to get rewarded for that, you know. But when you've got to make those, you know, decisions, and they're subjective decisions, they're based on actual fact, you have to be able to measure it. You know, because there'd be no point of me sitting down with somebody and going, well, Sophie, we'll talk about the last 6 months. I didn't think you did so well. And you'd say to me, geez, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought I did great. So then you have two really woolly statements. And I don't know, because I didn't set any targets for you. You know, I didn't, you know, you didn't have to move 35 boxes from A to B every day. So how are you to know how many boxes you had to move if I didn't, you know, say? And you'd agree, I'll do that. and then it's fine. So they're the kind of, if you have objectives easily understood and easily measured, otherwise you're only creating hassle for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense to everybody, or But as we go through, and as you're sort of getting your project stuff and that together, so you can, send me drafts, and this goes for everybody. You can send me a draft of your project, and I have a look at it, and see. Because the whole idea of these kind of courses is not that somebody like me or some other guy is sitting there waiting to get the project report in so I can go back to you and tell you everything's wrong with it. That would be insanity. That would be stupid, because the whole idea is on this these kind of courses is to get people to say, I'm going to try and practice doing a digital marketing campaign and play around with it. That's the whole idea of this thing. And so make mistakes, but so what? But then you'd have the confidence to go on and try something else again, where if you want to be a digital marketer, or if you're helping somebody, or it's your own company or whatever, you want to have confidence that you're trying things out and it'll make it easier. Any other questions on that one? Because I'm going to show you, before we take a break, I'm going to show you another one, which is, it's not written, I'm going to go right to the top. It's not written with the same reporting structure as the previous one, right? So it lacks a little bit of that kind of structure, as I say, but I mean, but the basic principle is the same. And there's a link here somewhere. So this the project that this person, I'm just going to go back to the project. Oh, that's not it. I have to go back here. It didn't open it in a new window. That's the thing that's something that I would recommend to you. If you are putting in a link to another website and you're already on either your own website or in the middle of a report, I would recommend that when you put in a link, that it opens, and you can do that when you set up the link, that it opens in a new window, so people can just tab back to where they were. Because if they go to wherever the link is, they may never come back to whatever you were on. So anyway, so this was about, and as I said, the structure was slightly different. And sometimes individuals will structure things differently if English is not their first language. I've found that learning over the years myself from reading a lot of, and we're not about, this is not an English language class, so the people who English is not their first language, that should never be an issue in this type of program, right. So this part of this program was to set up a proper website. Now this was done, I can't remember when this was done. I'll go back up there a second. And you see, like I said earlier on, in this instance, what this person did is just put in links to wherever they got their information from at the time. All right. And they use Wix. Now, so I'm just going to go to that, because what it does is it also shows that what we spoke about earlier, when we were talking about websites and that earlier on, so I'll kind of reference a couple of things here. A good alternative to using WordPress, if you want to play around with it yourself, is to use Wix.com. Because if you wanted to build a small website and you don't have any particular expertise in creating a website using a WordPress theme or anything like that, the Wix sites are not bad. They have improved from out of sight in the last few years from where they were. The structure, the technology, all of the processes they have improved dramatically, so they're easier to use, and the functionality, that's the word I was looking for, is way, way better than it used to be, and it's relatively straightforward for people to build, So this was for an accommodation, like it's sort of like Airbnb type of thing, rental in Rome, and I think it's must be still going. And this was a good few years ago. I can't remember what year. There was another woman that did this who was Italian. So and this was a business that she was going to work in, or it was her partners or something like that. I can't remember that far back. But it used how they were going to set out the parameters of what they were going to do and how they were going to run the campaign and what they were going to do. So the structure you can see is completely different. They probably, if I was anyway critical, do with some paragraph headings and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier for somebody reading it to negotiate it. So that if you come down here, you have, say for instance, that paragraph, I'd have to read that twice, maybe. Whereas that should be 3 paragraphs. Because remember, anything you're doing in this day and age, you're writing it to be read online. And to make it easier, 4 to 5 lines in any given paragraph. It makes it real easy to read. It breaks it up. Now, in overall, apart from that and everything, that the content was good here. So and all of that. So it's just that it was a slightly different structure, but it was equally as effective. So it was good. But you do have to. You do have to cover all the bases, if you know what I mean. That makes sense. Any questions on that?
Me.
Yeah.
Just wondering if there's a suggested timeline, like to measure the results. Like, for example, if I'm measuring from the beginning of November, would a month be okay? Or do I have to start mid-October or 2 months?
Well, a month would be fine. I mean, what you're talking about here is like sometimes when people are doing campaigns, there's a saying that it is what it is. And if that's the timeline that you're restricted to, then fine. You see, if you were doing something, a very targeted campaign that that had economic consequences and things like that, then you might say, I'm going to use at least 6 weeks or 8 weeks to gather more data and to get a more in-depth view of what I'm trying to achieve. But in terms of this project, a month should get you some information.
Okay.
And then you just decide then what you're going to do with it, that information. Or, you can evaluate it from two aspects. One is the quantity of the information you've managed to get. And then the next piece is the quality of so you get a whole bunch of data, but how much of that is good quality information that you can use, and and how much of it is fluff, So that's the kind of, it's the great dilemma of our time. We have more data flying around the world. And one of the problems we have is, how do we extract useful information from that? That's why up in the University of Galway now, they've got the Insight Institute up there, and you probably have 400 or 500 data engineers up there. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as a data engineer. Didn't exist. I would say, of all the jobs or the employment, the work that's available today, 20 years ago, 90% of it didn't exist. So that's so everything is changing at a rate of knots, as we would say. So, it's an exciting time to sort of be involved in things like that, but you have to be prepared for change, because it's coming down the track at 100 miles an hour, Okay. So that so there's the people who were on here, and for those who are going to look at this on the recording, I think I wanted to do it this week while we still have plenty of time left. I did mention last week that, what did I say? Did I say we could give people till the end of December if needed it? All right, that was very generous of me. So, yeah, but because I know there's a big chunk of December is going to be out for people. People are hardly going to sit down and start writing up their project after they had Christmas dinner. So I understand all that. So we'll do that. So anyway, guys, let's have a break. Like no more than last week, we don't need 3 hours for these classes. So, we'll be finished by 9:30 at the latest. So we'll take a break here anyway, and so tell a chance to get a coffee or whatever. So see you in a few minutes. Hello? Do you want to send your yeah, not take the go the expenditure of the yeah, I know. So what is going on, please? What's going on? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Text are right. Otherwise. Yeah. I have no idea. And Tuesday, someone's or whatever, like it's phenomenal, like. But yeah, he calls me. I'm there and get purpose them.
You want to, he's gonna do an hour and a half, we make 2 hours now. But he loves having it there.
Yeah. What day you just there tomorrow?
You're on a great day. I think he's a great day.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I mean, I could go to the gym and be back and you. It wouldn't affect you one.
Great time to make off.
Yeah.
After the process. Great.
Where do they do that? Is that some kind of set it up, somebody set up his business? Oh, it's not where the bake off takes place. And what do you think? How long will you ever be in there?
90 minutes. Like from Wednesday, they say 8, it's 10, it's 10.
Say it again. Oh. What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
We're back to the meeting then, right?
Yeah.
I got friends, they brought them over and we just keep it up there. Sometimes back in-
Yeah. Okay, guys, back, look to carry on. Now, somebody mentioned an email about an SEO, and maybe we just revisit again. It's I don't know if it has the same importance, and I don't know if anybody can actually say, explain exactly. I'm just going to come out of that for a second. Where it is, where I know that I mentioned previously when oh, idiot, yeah, and I may have this open already. Bear with me. No, don't. I went looking online for stuff on SEO because it's something that has changed quite a bit, and I don't know if it was something that anybody properly understood ever, but there was a huge amount of hype about it, and if you find that there's anything that there's a lot of hype about, the chances are that that's about the size of it, that there is just a lot of hype about it. I don't know how much substance. There was a certain amount, definitely, of substance involved in that. If you wanted to have to get found by people searching in Google and stuff like that, then you would have to have, when your website was being built, you would have to include all the keywords that of the nature of your business. And then it was always good to have traffic and connected links. So if you had links to other websites, there's plenty of traffic on them, and you get people trafficking back and forth. And also that's why, and what would add to that essentially is that if you have social media channels, but your main place of business is on your website, if you've got an e-commerce element in that, then a lot of the time you want to start your connecting to people. You want to start it on your social media and drive it to the website, so that people might start on social media, on your Facebook page or LinkedIn or whatever it is, but to get the whole picture, they have to go to your website. You know, that's where you sell. So that's the essence of what it's about. But just to see if we can make some more sense of it, I just logged into one of HubSpot's things today. A sec now, I'm gonna see if I can move that. I'm going to see what they say in this for a bit, but this link is available anyway on the slides, and you can look at it in
Is this the one that you have uploaded onto Moogle?
Maybe I did that already. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think it's in under the resources. I actually think the documents, I think there was 3 that you have put up there. They were really good content, all 3 of them. Like, where would you be going to get stuff like that? Because obviously, like,
you'll get a mountain of it on HubSpot.
HubSpot, okay.
Very good.
Okay.
And I had, it's just that we didn't sort of use many of those this term. I've used them in the past, but I think this might be up there. I'm not really. Just I can just hop in here and have a quick look. And what I'll do is yeah, it is. I didn't realize it was actually there. I'd forgotten that I'd put it there. But they have the Google Ads guide up there as well, and HubSpot marketing report and stuff. And I look to see what I'll do is I'll have a scan this week to see. Let me see now. Yes, I'll just take a note for additional resources. Yeah, because I do have others that I hadn't put up there, and I will do, and people can get access to them, and they're useful. Now, they won't be, you know, as I said before, they won't be 100% exactly what you need. But a lot of it here is, and you see, there's always going to be a little bit of like marketing hype, or, you know, the other thing as well is this, you know, anything that's written in the US, there's always going to be a bit more hype attached to it than there would be if it was written in Dublin or Galway. You know, it's just that things are pitched that way, you know, because they're expecting, because there's 100 companies out there doing or trying to do what HubSpot are doing. HubSpot will be quite successful at what they're doing, you know. Now, keywords matter a lot. They might matter more than anything, but it's and actually, they said here, they make an interesting point here, amplified by the rise of mobile and voice search. Search queries have become more and more conversational. Google's updates over the past 2 to 3 years have focused on understanding these types of queries better through natural language processing. And the thing is that because things, as I keep saying, are changing all the time. And that was something that, till I read that sentence now, that I had forgotten about to include the amount of times now that people just talk to their phone and say, you know, or Alexa or one of these, even if it's something silly like turn the lights on, turn the lights off. If people have those, does anybody here use any of these smart switches in their house? You know, so rather than get up and switch off the light, you sit in your chair and go, Alexa, turn off the light. I love it. Yeah, I don't have them. My son has them, and the problem is that you might end up in a house where everything is dark and you have no idea, you know, what is the password for Alexa to turn on the damn lights or turn on the telly or something like that. But it's a sign of the time we live in. So, you know, when people go on to Siri or whatever and ask a question, you know, does that add to the notion that keywords are important in searches? I don't know. I don't know whether, you know, what it does in that aspect, to be quite honest with you. But it's worth having a look at the HubSpot stuff. They're pretty good. Because again, as I said, if you look at this as you go down through this PDF, it's real easy to read. You know, small little, easily this is something I hadn't seen here before. Having a secure, you know, encrypted site isn't important for SEO. I would have thought having a secure site was important for everything. Because if you don't have, you know, the little padlock up here on the top of the screen, people are kind of spooked. And if you've got an e-commerce function on your website, then you should have that, because otherwise people won't do business with you, I would think. You know, they'll say, oh, you know, that site, I could end up getting hacked or whatever. Whether they could or not is neither here nor there, but they will think that, you know. Let me see what else is on here. So, man, you shouldn't link out. There's nothing wrong with linking out to other websites, I don't think. And you see, some of these things they may have created, put in these myths just to create a bit of, they've set it up so they can answer it that it isn't, if you know what I mean. But probably people weren't using them. Let's see what else they have in there. What do they say? Meta descriptions. You see, they'll have an impact. How big an impact they have, you know, the meta descriptions on pages on your website. I don't know how big. And, you know, Google don't announce to the world what the, you know, the actual details of their algorithms that are used in the searches. So it's not possible to know for certain. Now, you'd have guys who say, you know, they've researched 100 million pages and they can see this trend and that trend, and that's fair enough. But I don't know whether that's actual fact or not. Pop-ups. The use of pop-ups. Do you ever interact with pop-ups that come up on websites? See, for me, the frustration with pop-ups is if I end up talking to a machine. You know, if I'm talking to a human being on the other end of a pop-up, that's great. But, you know, if you're talking to a machine, you know, it's programmed, you know, to have, you know, but it can't nuance things, you know what I mean? So you know, sometimes it can only answer the questions that you don't want to ask, you know, that type of thing, you know. You get silly stuff in here, like even at big companies. Let's see if that was. Not necessarily. Like it, you know what they say, if you come across a homepage littered with copy, or the opposite spectrum, a homepage barely anything on it, like that's there going, it's a biscuit, it's a bar type of thing. You know, I don't know if there's any, if you come across the front page of a website that is absolutely littered with text and content and that, it'll annoy people because they can't navigate it. You know, ideally, you know, your front page needs to be really clean, easy to navigate, and easy for people to find things, you know, but it's got the salient information and all that type of stuff on it. So, anyway, I'm going to I'll leave it there for people to look at it. I think it's hard to determine, you know, to be perfectly honest, and I don't know if how important it still remains. It has some importance, but whether it is the Holy Grail or not, I am not 100% sure, you know. So any questions or observations on the whole SEO thing? You know, yeah, but it is worth sort of reading stuff from HubSpot on SEO, and maybe from some other marketeers that will give you an idea. You're unlikely to get vastly contrasting opinions, but you might get nuanced opinions where, depending on what their opinion of the world is, you know. So right, so Google Ads. Google Ads, it's something that I have to profess I don't know a whole pile about. If you go into the one thing about the likes of Google and Facebook, if you go into their help forums, they're pretty good and they're pretty straightforward in that they don't bamboozle people by having a whole load of gobbledygook in there. You know, they're pretty straightforward, you know. And so I you know, that it's pretty easy to navigate. Now, whether or not they're useful for you or not, type of thing, I don't know. Fernando, you said you've used Google Ads. Have you used it extensively, or?
Yeah, like we have campaigns running like for 3 months at a time, but it did happen to us once that we did them wrong in the settings, and it cost us like a lot of money, like over a very short period. So, like, I think that's a tricky thing about Google Ads. If you set them wrong, like they can be really expensive.
Yeah.
So,
and would your sort of modus operandi there be that you would set drop dead limits of what you would spend?
Yeah, now it is like that. So
Yeah.
it really depends on the clicks that you get, and that's what you pay. But there's several types of ads. Like they can be, some of them appear like in photos, like if you're on a website, it'll come like a small ad on the side with an image. Or they can be the ones that are like banner ads, like in the top.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the normal ads that if someone inputs like in Google, I don't know, whatever, a keyword that you have there, and it'll put you there at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what type of ad, like if you want to bring like people to know of you, or when they're searching for something like you directly.
Yeah. Yeah. Say, for instance, if I go into if I just go into Google here and I put in, because I was looking at this one earlier today, I just put in into the search there, landscaping Galway. There are quite a number of companies that are landscapers in Galway. One of them is a client of mine who at one point used to use Google Ads, and I haven't spoken to him in a while. I don't know whether he does or not anymore, but I wouldn't have thought so because he doesn't appear. So on the front page, you can see here that, it's an ad because it tells you straight up, right? And then, you have these, it'll pick up the ones where you've got a lot of traffic, and they'll have, pinned their businesses up on Google Maps and stuff. I would know that, for instance, these boys, now this is not an ad, you see, because you can see it, but these guys are in the game for a long time. And they have probably advertised on Google in the past. So they would have probably a lot of traffic, a lot of organic traffic, But you're starting to get down the pages. Now, it's interesting because you would have heard me mention on numerous occasions the whole idea of the golden pages, which used to be the phone directory in that, the printed version, which they don't do anymore, but they are still online. And they still, a lot of people will check the goldenpages.ie, so they would get a huge amount of traffic to this site in general. So they're like top 10, because all of these guys, I guarantee you, have paid for like little feature ads with the golden pages, so there's the top 20 on that. And so all of these guys would take paid advertising, I would say, with the golden pages. Could be proved wrong, but I think that's the case. Now how much they pay for that, I have no idea. But so you, because Fernanda, you're trying to reach people outside Ireland, aren't you? Or are you just
me?
Yeah, you.
No, from Ireland. People
Just
from
Ireland.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, yeah. All right. Because if it was outside Ireland, I could see why you would, but that's fine. If and were you able to tell whether it was worth your while or not?
Like we're on it. We just started them a month ago, so it's a bit slow at the moment still. But I think these ones are really good. For example, when you're in kind of more like a general business. For example, if you're selling, I don't know, cupcakes in Galway, like someone will put cupcakes Galway in Google, and you will be at the top. So there, it's more worth your while than if you're really a specific type of business. Because if you're very specific, at the moment they search, you'll anyways come up. And if it's more general, like I think that's when it's really
Yeah.
more worth your while. So if you put there summer camps,
If I
French.
put summer camps, would you guys
French.
show up on that?
put French maybe. Because
These guys are in the game a long time as well.
if you put maybe French or because it's language.
I know, I put it in after the French. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're not that one, but we should come up.
Well, you see their ads. You should.
No, we're not there, but we should.
Look for a refund.
I will. It's there. French language summer courses. It was there.
Oh, was it?
Down.
Is that it there? No.
No. There. Top on the top. It's that one also.
Euro languages.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
But it's more. But yeah.
Right. Okay. See, right. I can see why. I can see one reason why. Because it doesn't say anything about summer there. Wait, that's
No,
what.
but I think if you go up, we're there in one of the in one of those.
Yeah.
Not in the map, but up. I saw it. More down. More. There. French language summer courses.
All right.
That's it.
Oh, so are you operating with two different websites?
No.
Or was it ELC that was down here further as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, give you take them for a while. Yeah, not that far off. Off the top of it. So it's. You see, if somebody invests, like, it depends on what you're selling. Like I was looking at the landscape. For instance, if you are. Oh, they are using it. Why did that not show up? What I put, yeah, you see, sometimes if you're not precise, well, I put landscaping Galway. So I mean, I did, other people might be more precise, but this is they are still using it. I didn't know if Brian was still doing it or not, but so go back. It does. They are still taking paid advertising with Google. Now, it may not have shown up on the first page of Landscape Galway because the other guys are probably paying a lot more money, but if you're offering a service where if somebody gets, a big garden makeover, that could cost like €5,000 or something like that. So if you're paying €200 a month or something, and I'm not sure exactly what these costs are, then, if you get one job, your profit margin would cover you for a year's ads on Google probably, So what I'm trying to say is that it's relative. Everything's relative for different groups, So it depends on the Google ad as to who you're trying to reach, where are they, and is it worth your while spending that money or any money at all? Because it can be a little difficult to quantify where Facebook is so cut and dried by comparison. You know, that's the is there a certain sense of a leap of faith in it, Fernanda? You know, and unless you can ask people directly, you know, how, and I presume you do, is, you know, where did you find out about us?
Yeah.
Then,
So
yeah.
in our booking form at the end, it
Yeah.
says like, was it recommendation, social media, word of mouth, school teacher? Like we have different options and they selected there
And
for
do
us to kind
people,
of get an idea.
yeah, do people tend to fill that in or ignore it?
They have to.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mandatory.
Yeah, so they can't move on to the next page until they do it. Yeah.
No.
Well, that's, you know, that makes perfect sense, because if you didn't have it that way, they wouldn't do it. It's
Yep.
online forums. People, you know, they don't like writing things in or ticking things they don't have to, you know.
No, it's a drop-down selection, so it really doesn't
Yeah,
take them
yeah.
too long.
Yeah, because previously people used to use forms where you had to deselect things. And this is where Ryanair got into huge problems a few years ago. And they were actually taken to task by the European Union in, you know, you had to go in and tell them you didn't want insurance and you didn't want to bring your golf clubs in, all that kind of junk. They automatically assumed you wanted all of that and was going to charge you for it, unless you went in and said, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want a car, I don't want a hotel. And they had to, they were, like, the courts told them, you can't do that. It's actually, you know, people have to select it, you know, purposefully, whereas rather than, you know, end up paying money that they didn't realize they'd paid, you know. So, yeah, but that makes sense, because that gives you a lot more control over what you're spending money on, you know. And of course, yeah, I suppose it a lot depends on the business you're in. I remember, I think I said before that I think because Google Ads used to be called Google AdWords. And it was like when we were talking earlier on from the on the searching perspective and the SEO of having the keywords and the meta descriptions and all of that type of stuff. So when it was Google AdWords, the most expensive ads, as far as I know, a few years ago, were for law firms in Manhattan. You know, because New York City would have some of the biggest and most expensive law firms in the world, you know, but the amount of money that washes around there is phenomenal. So they would, if they are advertising on Google AdWords, they're looking for big class action cases and all the various compensation where they're suing people for millions, you know, because and they don't have any scruples whatsoever. Like, it's, can we do it? And whether if you can do it, then it's fair game. So if they can end up getting a class action against a gigantic company, then that's all they're interested in. And that's what they advertise, you know. Have you ever been, you know, it's like, you know, it at the simplest ends is, have you ever been run over by a bus type of thing, you know. And if you're still alive, you can get some money, you know. But what they have in the States are these gigantic lawsuits, you know. And so and you could end up, like, for instance, in the States in the last few years, there have been all of these lawsuits against the huge pharmaceutical companies, and who marketed product knowing that it was defective. And they've decided to give to the funds like 3 billion here and 2 billion there. So it's well worth the law companies taking it on and saying, you know, I can get you $200,000 and they'll get probably 20%, you know. So if you get 200 people doing that, that's a lot of money. And that's why when their Google AdWords would be every time they clicked, it was probably costing them $5,000, maybe 10. It's easily written off. And it gathered back in seconds. If they get one client in, 2 clients get a class action or something like that. You know, it's some of the big firms have set up spin-off law firms to just deal with one thing and one thing only, because the money is so big that's involved. It's bizarre, but they do it that way anyway. So, and of course, you know, Google will take their money the same as anybody else would take it. So that's the thing. Google Ads, there's a how to use Google Ads guide here, and that I have clipped in here and I just check to see if I put that up on the thing previously. Let's see now. How to use Google Ads. What was I looking at there? Yeah, so it is the how to use Google Ads guide is there in the resources thing already. So, but the one thing that is probably worth looking at is on the whole cost. And so yeah. So how much does Google Ads cost? And that, you know, that's like, you know, saying, you know, we used to have a saying years ago, how long is a piece of string? And what that meant is there's no answer to that question because it's different every single time, you know. And so this gives you, and they're coming across with some global. WordStream would be another kind of blogging entity and a CRM site similar to HubSpot. So it would be useful there. So they're going. I'm just going to see if I can make that bigger. So that I can actually read it. Yeah, the big one here is attorneys and legal services. So I wasn't making a liar of myself earlier on. That's the biggest cost-wise, because it's, and the reason obviously why that would be the case is because the potential benefits, the potential amount of money that people can make out of it is so gigantic, you know, so that if they're advertising, they're going to pay the most, you know. So I'm just going to pick on a few things here as I go through, but this is a pretty good blog guide as well. Yeah, and this is an important point. The biggest influence on Google ad pricing is industry. So, for example, the business services, that's legal, accounting, real estate is one of the most competitive verticals in Google Ads, and generally translates to higher costs per click. This is due to the nature of the professional services industry. One new client could yield upwards, you know, 1 to 10 grand, depending on your business. so a CPC or a cost per click of $50 for that is nothing, you know. So, and you are only going to be competing to a large extent against people in your sector, in your industry segment, you know. So if you're advertising, you know, for French language summer courses in Galway, you're not going to be up against some fancy law firm in Manhattan. So because you're not in the same business, so it won't matter, you know. But as I said before, if you're in Galway and you're marketing, you know, a burger restaurant, there's a lot of them in that. There's a lot of people selling that product in Galway. You know, if you're in the business of cleaning chimneys, probably not so many. You know, so it would be really cheap to have Google AdWords on chimney sweeping or what, something like that. You know, that type of thing, because there's virtually, you know, fewer and fewer and fewer people using chimneys. So that's makes sense. So there's a couple of good important points here. Neither consumer trends nor online advertising platforms are ever in a state of rest. Like, things are always moving up or down or in or out. So it's not steady state. You know, for instance, it says here, take COVID, for example, at the height of the pandemic, the average cost per click for the apparel industry, in other words, you know, clothes industry, was about $1.40. It dropped down to 70 cents in April when the average conversion rates went up, and then ended up 0.89 in May. So that's something. If you're taking Google ads and you're in the apparel business, you're big time. You know, you're selling like 10,000 coats, not 10. That type of thing, you know. So it'd be interesting to see, Fernanda, how it goes with your Google ads, and see if you find it worthwhile. You know, it'll certainly be potentially infinitely cheaper than print advertising, because print advertising is massively expensive. Plus, the other thing is, with print advertising, you have no idea if you've reached somebody or not. And if somebody books on your course, you have no idea whether it came from there or not. You know. See, a recent study by Google showed that the average return on investment on Google ads is 800%. That's $8 for every dollar spent. Now, how they arrived at that figure percentage, I don't know. You know, you see, if you say to somebody, well, you made $7 for every $1 spent, that doesn't sound anywhere near as fantastic as 800%. So they're always going to use the figures that on the face of it are unbelievable, but maybe excuse me, they mean something slightly different when you look into it, you know. So I think that's kind of, yeah, speaks for itself. So it's worth going through, like, at different times. It's worth kind of looking at these a few times and seeing if it makes any sense for you, you know. I don't know. We'd see. Has anybody else used them on here? No. Nobody else has used them. And Dee, were you thinking of using them for your promotional stuff?
For my project,
Yeah, or even anytime, even for business
um,
wise or
I'm sure that the company that I work for does
Yeah.
Google Ads themselves, but I wouldn't be at that level.
you're
now.
not
They'd
in
have
that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, if they're broad spectrum and it's more than one country and that kind of stuff, then the chances are they might. But then again, you're marketing to you're marketing to business, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure how that works. If it's business to business, then that may or may not be you may or may not use Google, because you guys may have already built up, a very solid client base and market to them and remarket to them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So if it's a kind of a captive industry where by and large everybody knows everybody, even though it's huge, then there may be a question of what would it do for you to get anything new, because you already are embedded, in it. So I don't know, but then again, of course, you would always, and I've used the analogy over and over again, why would Guinnesses bother their rear end advertising? Everybody drinks it anyway, but it's brand, they do it for just brand awareness and to keep the brand in the public eye. So sometimes people advertise just for that, and they're not actually trying to sell you anything on that particular time, even though they might claim to be, but it's really just about making sure the name is still out there, But it's worth like running through as I said, they're up on the Moodle, both of these things, and I must admit that the whole notion of the ad rank and the quality scores and that kind of stuff, and I've read them a lot of times, and I have to say I don't really understand it. I really don't. And there are so many variables that it's by comparison, Facebook is so easy. And if you're marketing on a local basis, then Facebook is probably, a better place to be. But that's just my take, and somebody else might be able to give me a much better take. But anyway, any questions on that? So, if you're going to be involved in the in digital marketing and stuff, and getting whether it's for yourself, your business, somebody else's business, or as an agent or whatever, content creation of some description, of any description is important. It's useful, and because there's probably a finite amount of content that you can use, but people are looking for new stuff every day, so it's similar in many ways to TV channels. When we got access, when I say we, I mean the world got access to fiber optics, for cabling and that, as opposed to copper wire, and this might sound very basic, that they used before. It meant that you had limitless opportunity to broadcast on fiber optics, hundreds of TV channels at the same time, whereas when they were using copper wire in the past, you were really limited to the amount of channels that you could broadcast. Now, the amount of channels didn't exist either, like it's not million years ago that Ireland only had two television channels. And I can even remember when there was only one television channel in Ireland, you know, and so, but now and those channels used to close down at 11:30 at night. So now we have hundreds of TV channels. There's going to be problems on an ongoing basis with content because they can only make it so fast, you know, and then the reruns. And you have, say, if you're in the States, you could sit down. I was in a friend of mine's house one day. He had Comcast, which they as a provider, I think they're being taken over by someone else. But so he had the top package or whatever. So on the face of it, he had like 310 TV channels, like, which is nuts. Like, because 75 of them were showing Friends at the same time, for instance. One or two of them, that's all they did all day long, was show the same Friends or, you know, some black and white cowboy film. So content is a difficulty. And so if you're promoting your business or whatever, content creation can be key, you know, and that means what's the message that you're going to put across, that type of thing. That's the way. So if you're going to see what can I do, you're going to set goals for pieces of content, you know, how does pieces of content fit into a wider marketing strategy? Now, how they do it, how you would think that sort of thing is, you might have one piece of content and it might be a theme and you're going to develop on it. So it might be something part 1, part 2, part 3, you know. They started doing things like this on TV a few years back. And the first ones to really do it was like turning a TV ad into a serial. It was like turning it into a TV program, but it was an ad for coffee, and it lasted maybe a minute or 2 minutes, because you used to have longer ads. And it was about, you know, instant coffee. Nowadays, instant coffee is almost an insult to people because we've moved on to ground coffee and we have coffee shops every 10 feet. But in those days, Nescafe instant coffee was a big deal. Nobody percolated anything or ground anything here. And they had a series that ran with somebody knocking on their neighbor's door in the apartments. It was either a woman knocked on the man's door or vice versa to borrow milk or coffee or some damn thing, you know. So the way it was pitched is that people could see, there's going to be some kind of romance between these two people, right? Now, I think they ran those ads in various versions for about 12 years, you know, and people were tuning into just the ads, and it was like 2 minutes, but it was a series of things. So that content was linked, right? There was no internet at the time. It was kind of ahead of its game, you know, and it was hugely popular, those ads, you know, and in fact, I'll look them up. Let's get the ads. And I'll just, as a matter of interest, I will look it up and I'll get the detail for next week, because it was ahead of this sort of thing. Now, this is a kind of a catch-all here: planning and producing best-in-class content. That's if you're doing it on a large scale. If you're, you know, even for a smaller audience and for something local, the content you want to use still needs to be decent, you know. So you want to have this, if you're putting your name to something, or if it's going to represent your business, it has to be good, right? It doesn't have to be absolutely unique and original and everything, but it has to have a good quality resolution of the either graphic or the video, and the sound. If it's video, has to be decent as well. It has to be, you know, good, because otherwise you're misrepresenting yourself, you know. So these are the various different types of content that you can use. Blog posts, long form content and guides, case studies, white papers, and ebooks. Ebooks are essentially those PDFs we were talking about earlier on that HubSpot and these guys come up with. That's what they call them. They've probably changed it since infographics were the cool dude things of a couple of years ago, and I still see them being used now. In fact, I see them starting to creep back into being used. And if you're going to use an infographic, you've got to make sure that it's clever, in that it captures everything in that one page or whatever. Now, earlier on the program, I mentioned that web site canva.com. Now if I don't think infographics on it are part of the free package, but you could have a look and see if they are. The very basic ones are probably. But the infographics can be pretty good, you know. Interactive tools and video. These are just typical content, and why you would use them: drive, increase, earn links to organic visibility, and all of that's type of thing. So I'm not going to labor that point, but to say that if you're going to create content, then, you know, and review it, and it has to be useful. I think earlier I might have mentioned, and this is a kind of a content thing, and it's generation. I'm just going to go into here, and I think I mentioned it a couple of times on here that this was a kind of an experimental project that said, you know, we're going to put signs on poles in Salthill that people can. It's called a visitor trail, that people can go up and tap, and when they do, it brings them to a website, and there's a guy there talking. So that we were playing around with this thing for a while, and this was the first version of the sign, and this was built on a Wix base, platform base, and it was that was real rough and ready type of thing. And I have these in the wrong order, I think. I left one out. Bear with me. Oh, no, I didn't. I skipped it over. So then, as with anything else, as you move it on like a generation, so that sign now has evolved from this into that, right? And and if you now hit the QR code, or if you tap the little on the sign where it says tap here, there's, bear with me for a second. There's a little, it's made of some kind of resin. It's like that. It's like a little donut type of thing. And you can program those from your phone. And you stick it on the sign, so that if people go up with an Android device, and I think it works the same for iPhones, and you just literally hold your phone up to the little donut thing, it'll click straight into the website, you know. And And the beauty of doing something like that is because we've now reformed the website a bit, and it's still going to develop further. Once those signs are up, they're up. And you can make all the changes in the world on the web pages on a regular basis. So that's sort of an example of content creation. And this is a kind of an experiment, and that it's like a proof of concept thing. And if it works, then you look at expanding it further and doing other bits and pieces with it, you know. Now, this is an example of a business idea that can't be run commercially on a regular basis. Like, you can't charge anybody for this service, because for two reasons. One, they wouldn't pay it, and it'd be too difficult to collect it even if people wanted to pay it, you know, because they'd have to get in and fill in something, and people don't like filling in forms unless they absolutely have to. So this would be something that would have to be commissioned by the likes of Forge Ireland or somebody like that, you know. So this is just, it's one way of doing it. Now I'm going to, right, okay. Now, that near field communication, that's what that little thingy that goes on the thing on the sign is. That's NCFs. And they're very clever little widgets, and so you can program them. You can literally program them on your phone, and they will take you, you know, to any online link that you want, you know. And they can be either hard plastic like that, or they could be paper. They could be on a roll. They're fantastic, you know. It opens up all sorts of options. There was something else I wanted to put in there. Where is it? Yeah, QR code I wanted to mention because they're on there as well. QR codes were designed, developed as far back as 1994. 18 years ago, almost 20, almost 30 years ago, almost now. And and they would have been, because the Japanese, even in that time in the 90s, had brought down the art of manufacturing to a fine art. You know, they had a thing called just-in-time manufacturing. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. And they used to use a system called a Kanban system. And that meant that you didn't stockpile a whole load of raw material waiting to build something. Now, over the years, one of the biggest problems that manufacturing industries had was, you know, having big storerooms and stockpiles of material. And it cost them money. So what the Japanese did, say the likes of Toyota, they would have a gigantic car manufacturing plant somewhere in Japan. They would say to the people who built the components, we want you to build your factory right next door to ours. So you might have 5 component plants and then the car plant all on the same road. So you get small trucks going in and out every 2 or 3 times a day, delivering the components. So they didn't have to waste space by having a big warehouse with all this junk in it. It just got developed. And to keep track of all that stuff, they developed things like QR codes, and which were way ahead of their time. Barcodes came later, and they have been so useful to the world. But a lot of people in the last few years, you know, yours was said, you know, they've had their time, QR codes, so we'll never use them again. During COVID lockdowns, QR codes have come back into fashion, and they're being used for everything. Everything. You know, from you going in, what we had in some instances was you go into a restaurant, you know, when they were coming out of the lockdown, and there was a sticker on the table with a QR code on it, and if you scanned it with your phone, it was the menu. You know, and when you think about how smart enough that was, because rather than hand you a document that, you know, 20 other people had handled, and you'd have to start spraying it with all sorts of stuff, and people would be spooked by it. They were using those. But now I notice we've gone back almost exclusively to using the actual menus. Now you can bring this thing, the whole idea of the technology side of things to the nth degree. Last May, I was in a cafe or kind of restaurant in Harvard Square in Boston, in Cambridge, literally just around the corner from Harvard, MIT, all these places. Now, it's wired to the moon around there, and it's the university central, and you have, you know, every techie nerd on the planet it comes through there every now and again. But I was in this restaurant and they had QR codes. I was sitting at the table and I was 6 feet from the counter, and I couldn't tell them verbally what I wanted to order. I had to order it online, and then they would deliver it. And I went, I'm sitting in there. I'd order it online if I wanted it delivered to my house, you know, but no, so I left. But that was, you know, it just didn't make sense, because the big long menu, and it was hard to navigate because it wasn't particularly clever. And I said to the person there, can I not just tell you I want, you know, a BLT and a Coke? No. So anyway, that was just a quirky aside. So I had a couple of other things on the content curation, because there's content creation and there's content curation. And curation is just grabbing things from all over the place and making it relevant to what you want. And whereas content creation, you're making it up as you go along, type of thing, you know. So, well, I'll on that content side of things, I will, I'll work that into next week's class, because I don't want to take a bit longer than I thought to get into it. Okay, and any questions?
No.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. Now I think I did a silly thing after the break. I don't think I shared the screen, but anyway, it was recording the whole time. So
No, but we could see the screen.
oh, you could. So where I'm looking at something here now. That's all right then. I'm not as. Oh, here it is. I've managed it. There we are. Okay. I lost a little widget at the bottom of the thing. Okay, guys. Again, as ever, if anybody's got any queries on their projects, assignments, or anything, and you need to get in touch, please do so, and I will answer the email as quickly as I can. And when you post assignments, I will correct them as quickly as I possibly can. Anything else? If not, I will leave it there for tonight, and I'll let you all go home to watch the highlights of the World Cup, which you've missed for the last hour and a half. I won't tell you the result of the match that was on while we were on. Anyway, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All righty.